All right.
All right, and we're live. So it was a good match for NYCFC. Not only was it about the victory, but it was about the lineup we saw. You're watching CD Postgame Live. Mike Andrew here, Chris P on the other side. So what's your thoughts on the game so far? As I tweet out some information for people so they know can contact us.
Go for it. I thought it was a good game. We got to see some of the new guys take part of a game, which we haven't been able to see so far because they arrived late. We got to see great creativity from Morales, Harrison, and Villa up the middle, which was fantastic. And at the end of the day, they got a win. The first win in Arizona, the first win that's not against a college team this preseason. So it's nice to go into the season with some momentum. Yes, it's a pregame show,
Preseason game,
that's right. But it's a win, and at the end of the day, after getting beat 3-4 games in a row, a win is nice, builds the confidence going into Orlando, and I think that's what Vieira wants. He wants his players to get confident, not just with each other, but also with everyone around them, not just on the field, but off the field. So there's that sense of community, that sense of family where they say, well, we're in this together, so let's get to it.
So, I mean, the big talking point to start has to be the lineup. We got to see how many players did we see for the first time today? We saw Cayens in Ecuador, but we saw Herrera today for the first time, Ring for the first time, and Wallace for the first time. So 3 debuts for NYCFC in this matchup, and it was, it played very well. But what it's going to force Patrick Vieira to make a lot of decisions.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing. It's better to not know who your players are going to be because you have too many options than have to struggle to pick one because everyone's hurt or isn't playing up to what you expect them to.
So I guess the first thing you probably want to talk about, because I know we talked about it while the game was going on. When you look at players making their debuts at the end of the season, at the end of the preseason, is that a factor of MLS having a short preseason? Is that the transfer window opening too late? What do you think factors into it? Why do you think that we're waiting so long to see these guys work together?
This is definitely a question that I've seen thrown around in a few places, and you have to wonder who's responsible for the players getting here, and Vieira not really having his lineup set yet. He said in a call we did this week that we were on that he hasn't really decided whose starting 11 is going to be going into Orlando. And you have to wonder, it's because the players haven't been there long enough for Vieira to see enough of them. But the question goes down to, whose fault is it? Is it Vieira's fault for not putting them through enough in preseason practices? Is it Reyna's fault for signing them too late? Is it MLS's fault for having a transfer window so late in the season? What do you think it comes down to?
I think just like in everything, it's going to be a little bit of all three. It's going to be sometimes these negotiations take a little bit longer than you want. It's not always a perfect setting. I think it's also a factor of that when you're looking and targeting specific players, the more they know that you want them. Sometimes not every player is Alex Ring and wants to come to NYCFC. They might not want to come to MLS. So it's it's a factor of a bunch of things. I wonder how much of it is. I think there's definitely a piece of it that MLS and I think the preseason is 6 weeks is a lot of time for some teams, but it's not a lot of time for everybody. And I think NYCFC also in the past, this is their third preseason. It's the second time that they've taken an international trip to start, and I think that kind of messes things up because not only are you taking time away from the players to be on the field and working out together, but it's also about when you look at players like Ring and Herrera. If you're not in the country, how can you do you really have people focused on the paperwork side of it that maybe should be focused on it?
Yeah, that's a very valid point. And at the same time, one of the things I want to bring up is a lot of the issues that were with these international players were visa issues. Players couldn't get their paperwork done on time. But at the same time, what we've seen happen this offseason is Vieira has completely finished remaking this team. This is no longer. There's a few players left over from Christ's tenure: R.J. Allen, Tommy McNamara, and a few others like Shelton. But all in all, this is Patrick Vieira's team. I don't think if Vieira sticks around for one more season in the next offseason, I don't think we're going to see this much turnover, which I think would help with the preseason. But we've gone from a season where we had to put our entire roster together, so that preseason was kind of terrible. And then the next year we had a new coach, so he wanted to get rid of players. And second season now with Vieira, he's still trying to get rid of the players from Christ that he didn't like. So we've kind of gone from weakness to weakness instead of going from strength to strength. So I think if we start seeing some continuity with the coaches, it'll help preseason preparation in the long run because there won't be that much turnover.
So let's focus on some of the play in the game. You know, Rob Hobson's out there. Thanks, Rob, for the support and tuning in again. You know, he loved the fact that the ball was flying around today. He also liked the fact that we broke the press. And it's a talking point that I wanted to bring up from this game because we saw Sean. Who's not talking loud enough, Taylor? Is that
me?
We saw Sean Johnson play some balls out the back, just playing long balls. We saw it on a goal kick. We saw it also on a couple of distribution plays. I wonder, is Patrick Vieira, is one of the things that he learned from last year that he can't be so specific in the style of play, and does he have to let these players maybe play the way that they're comfortable?
I hope so. I mean, these are professional athletes. If Sean Johnson feels that a pass to R.J. Allen or Shanor Brillant is going to lead to a turnover, don't force them to make that play. Trust your players. That's why you bring them in. That's why you bring in people. That's why you practice with them and train with them and teach them how to do things. Have trust in them. If you think Johnson is the best goalkeeper for the job, let him lob it up every now and then if that's what he thinks is necessary. If he does it every single time, then yes, talk to him, maybe reevaluate that, but trust your players at the end of the day.
So, you know, one of the players that got a lot of attention, and it's funny because look, there's criticism and there's praise all the time, but Alex Ring, I saw some people praising him very early, and then I saw some people not impressed. What were your thoughts on Ring for the first time that we saw him out?
I'm kind of in the middle on him. He did really well at being that enforcer role, that Federico Bravo. And I know you mentioned it early on. Is he going to be Bravo 2.0? Is he going to get a lot of yellow cards? Because he made some tackles that were a little bit harder than they should have been. But at the end of the day, is that what Vieira wants from him? Is that something that he just decided to bring on to the game? I liked him. He was good at being outlets for players, but as you brought up earlier, he wasn't always an outlet because he wasn't always in space. And I think that's something you definitely want to talk about.
Well, it's about being in space, but it's also about wanting the ball. And we saw, let's look at a simple play. R.J. Allen's got a throw in deep in NYCFC's half. He's looking for an outlet. Ring is one of the closest players to him, but Ring makes no movement to try to create space. He's just standing there and saying, okay, well, look, at least I'm occupying my defender. But sometimes that's not enough because if Allen is still struggling, he's got to make a move. He's got to be a part of the player who wants the ball. And we saw a couple of balls that went between Ring and Allen, between Ring and Morales, and you wonder, was it because Ring wasn't working hard enough to get there, or do you think it was because some of this was just rust and miscommunication? Because we saw that a lot with Jack Harrison when he was on the right-hand side in the beginning of the game. Dan Royster thinks that Ring might be just Mikey Lopez, but with a little bit of talent.
It's kind of tough to tell because we weren't there. I saw the corner flags moving a lot, so I'm trying to figure out if a lot of those passes that you mentioned were in the air. Ring had a great pass to Villa on the ground. That was no issues. Villa was a little bit upset that he didn't play it that well. But the question remains is, yes, there may be some rust there, but these are relatively high-level athletes. I think at the end of the day, what was the big issue was the wind and how much of a factor that may have been. Harrison did look a little sloppy at times, but like you said, it's a question of, is this going to be a sophomore slump for him? Is he just a little bit rusty? Is he trying to do too much? Is he trying to defend out of the front like Patrick Vieira wants his players to do? I don't know. I think ideally we would have seen this lineup 2-3 games ago and we would have been able to see more and more of them, but right now it's too early to tell, and that's not exactly what you want going into the season next week.
So last season, we were beat to death with Patrick Vieira's favorite phrase, we're going to score more than we concede.
Right.
This year's famous phrase, or his catchphrase for most of the season, I anticipate is going to be defending from the front. You mentioned a conference call that we were both on earlier on in the week, and that was the key talking point from Vieira relative to this team and the lineup and the decisions he's made.
Live audio.
Okay, we're back. One of the things that Vieira mentioned is the idea that you're gonna try to defend from the front, and I think one of the guys he mentioned in that, or who was actually on the conference call with him, was Rodney Wallace. So Wallace, even though he was one of the last players signed, started this game, and look, he's got MLS experience. He's a cup winner for Portland, but he did what we wanted to see. That again, let's talk about two players that weren't in the starting lineup, Andrea Pirlo and Tommy McNamara. I don't know where they fit into this lineup.
Well, I mean, I want to go back and address the defending from the back, because that, like you said, that's going to be a big talking point for the rest of the season. And just to give everyone context on that, a lot of the questions that came up were, is the defense really better than last year? Have you done enough to strengthen the defense that gave up? Is it tied for the most goals in MLS last year?
No.
They were definitely up there.
Yeah,
they gave up a lot of goals. And the question was, what did you do? What are you going to do to make the defense better? And Vieira's answer was, well, it's not just about making the back four better. It's about making the entire team defend better. So we can't just blame or put the defense solely on the back four. Everyone needs to defend. Villa's got to defend. Harrison's got to defend. Wallace has got to defend. And that's where Wallace, we saw, do a great job of that. And that's something. He's played left back. He's played left wing. So he's going to be a great tool. But let's go on to the next question. Does that mean Tommy Mack no longer has a position? They just gave him a raise. They just gave him a contract extension along with R.J. Allen. So where does Tommy Mack fit in here? I'm not 100% sure. I can see Pirlo being rotated with Herrera and or Ring. That's not going to be an issue. The question is where Tommy Mack fits in. Do you sub him out for Harrison? Do you sub him out for Wallace? What do you do there?
I think that's something we're going to have to wait and see. The key to everything is how these players respond to the pressure and the challenges they're given. So when you see a guy like McNamara on the bench watching this team play, does he elevate his game, or does he kind of crouch down and say, hey, you know what, I can't do this, and become the next Mix Diskerud? Well, let's take a question in or let's focus on some of the comments, because they're coming in pretty fast, and it's hard to keep up.
Well, I've been seeing some of them, and a lot of people are saying that Tommy Mack may have lost his spot. But here's something that Vieira also mentioned on the conference call. He mentioned a few times playing three out of the back. Is that going to be an option where you take out one of those defenders and you slot in McNamara?
Could be, especially if your midfield is applying so much pressure that you don't need to. If everyone's defending better, and Villa is the only one who has really limited defensive responsibility, that could work. I think when you do that, then you have to take Pirlo out.
Are you saying so? It'd be 3-4-3 with.
But not having Pirlo in there, you got to leave Herrera or Ring in there to offset that, because Pirlo's not going to give you the defensive pressure that Herrera or Ring did.
So in your mind, it's either Tommy McNamara or Pirlo, but not both.
I think that is clear. That that's the question you have to ask when you're looking at these. So let's say you want to see Andrea Pirlo's distribution, and I'm not saying he can't play defense. He definitely positionally is one of the smartest guys on the field, if not the smartest guy in the field. But from an effort standpoint, if the defense falls apart and he's required to respond to someone else's lapse of space, then can he recover? A guy like Herrera with his physical ability can recover faster than a Pirlo can.
Well, personally, if I was the coach, I would 100% agree with you. But knowing Vieira and knowing the way he's played, he's going to go back to that same answer as last year. We're going to score more than we concede. So he's going to say, with Pirlo on the field, we're going to distribute better and we're going to score more goals. Yes, we may give up a goal or two more throughout the season, But in Vieira's mind, Pirlo right now will make up for that goal differential with his passing ability.
So Taylor Bouvet really likes the 3-4-3 idea. And Martin Beal brings up a good point. Maybe this is a situation that we are either looking at a different lineup based on who we're playing, so you kind of work on your matchups. But then the other thing is maybe you have a different lineup based on where you're playing, and you play that 3-4-3 in Yankee Stadium where it's a little more narrow. And then when you have a larger field, Red Bull Arena is supposed to be one of the biggest fields in the league. When you're playing something that has a lot more space, and you know that there's going to be more ground to cover, maybe that's the game where you take Pirlo out and you go to that different format.
Well, we saw that last year. Vieira started off with that WM playing a 3 at the back at Yankee Stadium to start off the season. That didn't really end up that well for him. It lasted maybe 3-4 games into the season before he switched to a permanent 4-3-3 and then kind of played with that. So, yeah, I know he mentioned on the call that he has players now that have the ability to switch and play different positions depending on the team and the game flow. So I definitely agree with you there that he is going to switch the lineups, switch formations even for different teams, different cities, different stadiums. So it's going to be interesting to see what the lineup is going into Orlando in a new stadium.
Here's something that's interesting because David mentioned it on Facebook, and also someone, the Williams bro on Twitter mentioned it in a response to a Glenn Crooks tweet. But it's both the same comment, but it's about two different players. It's about the speed and athleticism of Tommy McNamara and Andrea Pirlo relative to this lineup. And I think that's one of the things that's a challenge is this. One of the things that I thought of right as soon as Maxi Morales was brought in is that this lineup does not resemble NYCFC from last year. Going into this game, prior to the Morales signing, I was thinking that we got a lot of similar players where Thomas McNamara takes over Frank Lampard.
Right.
And we have players that are plugging in specific holes, but we knew which holes we were trying to fill. Morales comes in and changes everything. And it's probably where we should transition the conversation to now is the front three, with the exception of Villa, did a lot of rotation. You mentioned that you saw Morales and Wallace switch out of position, and the middle three did a lot of rotation. That is... I love to see that in a game. I love to see teams do that and really force defenses to think not about who I'm covering but where I'm covering, because it's challenging. And
like you said, Vieira, that's what he wants. He wants players that can play different positions throughout the game. And I guess to go back to the Tommy McNamara, can he do that? Can he play? He can play left wing. He can play central attacking midfield. We saw it earlier in the preseason. He didn't do that great of a job, in my opinion. He didn't stand out or draw enough players away from David Villa the way we've seen Maxi Morales do. When Morales gets the ball, the other team notices, and you can't double up on David Villa. That gives him the space he needs to operate. When T-Mac gets the ball, teams aren't going to start doubling up on him or attack him more. They'll keep an extra guy on Villa, and that's where Morales' strength lies in. The fact that he's quick and has playmaking ability that Tommy McNamara doesn't seem to have, even though he has that great long-range shot ability. I think at the end of the day, you're right. Maxi Morales comes in, changes his team, makes it much more dynamic, makes it quicker up the middle, and I think that's going to be deadly for teams if we can get it right, if the players can connect throughout this rest of the season.
So let's take a moment, pause, remind everybody we are taking calls, 646-493-1904. We love the comments coming in on Twitter. We love them coming in on the Facebook Live feed. But you can also call. We might have a problem sending the audio out to you, so you might actually have to wait for our response on the Facebook Live feed. But we definitely know we'll be able to hear you, and the people listening to this feed should be able to hear you. We apologize. We're still trying to sort out those technical issues, but
it's our preseason as well.
Let's move on. Sean Magaletta, and Sean, your post just got folded up. I don't know how to bring that back down, but let's talk about the player that I could remember him mentioning in that, and it's the Jack Harrison, because we talked about him. In the beginning, Harrison looked a little rusty. He looked he didn't link up well with Ring. He missed a pass that came from Maxi Morales. I mean, he had a great burst of individual play where he beat 4 guys in that one run.
Yeah.
But then at that last touch, he missed it. He missed that touch out to R.J. Allen. But Jack Harrison looked pretty sharp. He's grown into this preseason.
Yeah, when he started off, I thought he looked poor, to be completely honest. But like you said, he did progress. Whoa, that sounds weird. He did progress better on as the game went on. Excuse us, we're having technical difficulties. As you can tell, this is definitely a live show. So
what did you touch?
I didn't touch anything. At the end of the day, though, I think that's weird, but whatever. We'll keep going. I think Jack Harrison, you're right, did grow into the game.
How are we doing out there? You know what it is? I think it's your mic cable. Give us 1 second. Why don't you take that call? Keep with that thought.
Gotcha. So I think at the end of the day, what happened is Jack Harrison may have been trying to do too much, may have been trying to compensate for his early errors, and that showed. He's still young. He's just out of college. He's been struggling to find a role on this team. We've seen him play on the wing. We've seen him play in the middle, and now that he's finally grown into the spot, he seems to have beaten out Kyrie Shelton for that role on the wing. And I think now that he's got this confidence, and we saw it grow throughout the game, I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen with Jack Harrison is he's going to get better every single game as he gets comfortable, not just with the other players around him, but he gets comfortable, to be honest, with himself, with his own abilities. And that's going to be another strength for this team. We're going to see him perform better and get better throughout the season, at least in my eyes.
All right, let me see.
Well, I'll keep going while Mike fixes the mic.
No, I think I got it.
Oh, there you go.
But it was my apologies. So, yeah, see, Dave knows how to work with microphones. He's saying just unplug it and plug it in again. That's let's John Sourshell. John, people are actually calling for Chris to do more Blue City Radio. I got to make sure you protect your spot. But John made two comments, and you kind of mentioned it relative to Tommy McNamara earlier. That Tommy Mac's game is about finding space. I don't disagree with that, but I think the key is we saw Morales draw the attention, and I didn't see that with Tommy McNamara when he was playing. And if you want David Villa to find more space and get more opportunities, you saw it with also the cross. Maxey went out there, immediately drew the attention, and all of a sudden Villa finds that space because the attention's focus has shifted. The defense's focus of attention has shifted.
Yeah, I think it's 100%. His link up with Villa is fantastic just to start. And the fact that he can draw defenders away from Villa and to himself makes it better. The fact that he's also 5'3" and can draw some pretty good fouls also helps, as we saw with the free kick that was set up for Villa. And by the way, I want to make sure David Villa takes all of our free kicks going forward. I know Pirlo started taking them last year. I know I'm getting a little bit off topic, but I hated Pirlo's free kicks. I've seen him do fantastic things in Serie A and with the national team, but Villa's been great. He did great our first season. Let him take the free kicks, and that's all I'll talk about free kicks for now. I promise.
Think. What am I? Is that me?
But I do have something I want to ask you. What did you think of Yangel Herrera? Is he going to be our answer in the number 6 role?
I thought he was. No, that's definitely something funky. I'm gonna turn off the. We'll turn off the feed on the microphone on the phone calls until we actually get a phone call. We're gonna leave that off for now because I think that might be what's giving us the.
All right.
The headaches. If we do get a phone call, then let us know. We'll work on that. But I think Herrera did well. But I think we saw all three. We saw Herrera and Ring kind of shift off.
Right.
And I think that the interesting thing was I saw Herrera play the 6 by himself. I saw at one point Ring kind of drop back there, but then we saw Ring and Herrera play, a dual, defending midfielder roles, and actually leave Morales just up top underneath the forwards. So I think Herrera can do it. It's one game was just really too not enough of.
You didn't see enough yet to make a decision. I thought his tackles were really good, spot on. His passing was a little bit off to his teammates, but that's to be expected. He just joined the team, last week, 2 weeks ago? So that's to be expected. I liked what I saw from him. Do you think he's better than Sands right now?
Oh, well, it's funny because Jason Pena wanted to ask us to talk about Sands, and we saw Sands on the, on that red card play.
Yeah.
We also saw Ring play the role that I think a lot of people expect him to play. Ring basically came in and said, "You're not going to do that to our player, especially a 16-year-old kid." But I liked Herrera better than Sands. Look, Sands' distribution has been great. I think Sands has the where it's great that he plays that one-touch game.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's built too much into him, and he can turn a couple of times. He can be a little more focused on multiple options as opposed to just going back. When Sands gets the ball, I think he's got two options in his head, and he's got to look for that third option.
Well, I mean, to add to it, he's a center back by trade. He plays center back with the academy team, plays center back for the national team. So when he gets the ball, usually it's let me get it out or let me get it back to the keeper. And you're right. I think that's what he's been trained to do. Look to see if he can make a quick pass forward, and if he can't, get it right back. And I think that's been a detriment to him. But again, he's 16 years old. It may take a little bit more time for him. Do you think he ends up getting signed by the team?
No, not this year. I know that's been that came up on the conference call. I know we saw two different recaps of that story. We saw Christian Arose from Empire Soccer write the definitive Sands is not getting signed story, and then we saw Michael Lewis, who I thought gave a more accurate account, which is it's still up in the air. Vieira didn't make a definitive statement on the call. He just basically said, "Look, Sands has to report to the U17 residency on Monday following the end of preseason, and that's where they expect him to go." That doesn't mean that NYCFC has made a decision. It just means that he's going to keep going along.
Yeah, I know what Vieira said was that him and Claudio Reyna have been sitting along with the staff trying to figure out what to do with James Sands. They want to make sure that he gets playing time. And the question is, will he get more playing time with NYCFC or with the academy and the national team? They know that next year he's going to be with the U17 for the World Cup, the U17 World Cup. So he would miss time with the team anyways. The only thing that I've seen be a concern thrown out on Twitter is, what are the odds someone comes in and scoops him up?
Well, if he's an academy product by NYCFC, who's going to scoop him up? The only one who can scoop him up is an international club.
I mean, we've seen international teams come in for young Americans before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at but I think that's also a factor where sometimes those players are shopped that way. I don't think Pulisic was playing for his club team, and someone said, "Oh, this is we got to take a look at this player." I think it was something where he said, "Hey, if you want to play, let's get you out there."
All right, so you're not worried about him going anywhere?
No, not. I think as in MLS at his age and as an NYCFC academy product, he's locked into NYCFC. So I feel comfortable saying that. Yes, there is a risk that he could get scooped up, but you'd have to find he's got to get more exposure. So the more he plays with the U17s and the more that international scouts pay attention to those games, then you run the risk. But as far as him being on the radar, I don't think he's there yet.
Well, I mean, playing with Villa and Pirlo, that'll put you on the radar of a lot of teams.
And you just made a good point. He was playing a lot of center back. So with as a center back, as a U.S. center back, not a lot of people picking him up. As a number 6 with really good vision, then that's a different story. But he's got to grow into that role. So let's go back to some of the comments. Gio Trombetta is concerned about Ring's touch. I think a lot of people. Let's talk about two things that happened in all the games in this tournament. The field was miserable, terrible, and I think let's not forget that the field will affect touch. First of all, guys are. We saw the goal against Houston that Shinokin gave up. He gave up the turnover. NYCFC conceded the goal, but that was all about the Shino taking a slip and then being concerned with his touch after the fact. I think we saw guys slipping all over the place on this field, and also when you slip or when that ball's coming to you, it's not going to roll cleanly.
Yeah, I mean, like we discussed earlier throughout the game, there's 3-4 games happening a day on this field. It's gonna be terrible, regardless of the action of it, and that may have led to bad touches here and there. But I do think that Ring did pretty well. It's going to take time for him to get used to it. But I know here we'll talk about Adam has a great question with all the midfield depth. What's going to happen to Lopez? I don't think anything will happen to him. Like Mike said, if James Sands goes back to the academy in midfield and at that sixth position, you'd have Mikey Lopez, Yangel Herrera, and Alex Ring. And you have to keep in mind that Yangel Herrera is here on loan. Yes, it's from CFG, and there's a good chance we could get it extended, but he's only here for 1 year. So you have to plan for the future. And if Yangel Herrera is gone next year, you don't want to start again saying, oh, well, we have no one left over if Ring doesn't work out for whatever reason. And, you rely on Herrera. And then we're back to the same situation we were this offseason. Keep Mikey Lopez around. He's young. He's an American, so he doesn't take up an international spot. And he doesn't take up that much roster salary cap space either. So I don't think he's going to go anywhere. I know a lot of people aren't high on Mikey Lopez, but I think he's shown to Vieira that he's got the determination. And I think he was among the leaders, along with Brian, for winning the ball in the air. And Mikey Lopez, if you've ever met him, is not a tall guy. So that shows that fight that he has. That's why I'll always like having Lopez on the team, regardless of what people say.
And Caitlin makes a great point. This is a long season. You have injuries, you have international duty, and you also have the fact that you're going to have Open Cup. And Vieira has already stated that this is a better team, better suited to compete in the Open Cup. And I think that's going to be a big difference. Is you're not going to have that one and out. Hopefully, not that have that one and out tournament. You're going to play 3 or 4 games in this tournament.
Right, and I mean that's what you want. You want a team that can be able to compete, and not forget Open Cup. Just think about midweek games where you're traveling from New York to Kansas City to San Jose in a week. That's going to be killer for some of these guys. So it's good to have that rotation around.
And I don't disagree with that, but we saw with Vieira last year, the one time that you thought that he should have rested players, including a player like Josh Saunders last year, he didn't. He kept his starting 11 on because they were playing. He was kind of playing the hot hand,
and then he learned his lesson. Hopefully.
So going back to the lineup, so we saw 67 minutes from Rodney Wallace, 67 minutes from Yangel Herrera. Camargo came in to replace Wallace.
He came in for Herrera and Wallace switched, and Sands and Camargo switched.
Yeah. So I think that was interesting because I think a lot of people thought with Camargo they were signing another midfielder, and Camargo came in to play that. I mean,
like almost of a wing, central attacking mid, almost.
But that attacking role and not really a midfielder role.
And Tommy Mack 2.0 almost. Do you think he's going to be the guy that takes Tommy Mack's job?
I think there's a lot of guys you could say that about because look who's playing the 8. So it's going to be a challenge. And as we talk about substitutions,
good question, Tony.
the question of why is Ethan White being why is he the substitute for RJ Allen? Look, I guess you got to give him minutes, but Shannon Gomez has shown that he can do it. He can do it well. So you're kind of thinking on the depth chart that Shannon Gomez is going to be the guy who fills in for that role.
Well, that's it. Shannon Gomez can do that job well. You want to know if Ethan White can do it well because there's a long season, and in case, for whatever reason Gomez can't play or Allen can't play, you want to know who's going to be the guy that's going to be able to step into that role. You want to know what these players can do. That's what preseason's for. You don't want to go into a game in the middle of the season where you don't know who's going to play what position because you never tried him there. So I think at the end of the day, he came in with 13 minutes left. So it wasn't a huge risk. He didn't start him there. We didn't give up a goal. So if anything, it's more minutes for White at right back, which is only a good thing just in case something happens. And I think that's why he came in.
So this is the second game we saw no change at keeper. Your thoughts? Did Johnson do enough? I mean, he got the PK save, which was, a great effort. He just, again, it's 50-50 shot. He picked the right side. He got down there quick, but it was a positive performance. Wasn't great, and his distribution suffered sometimes. A couple of times he made the wrong decision as far as putting the ball into a guy under pressure. But then again, we addressed it earlier. He also just at times when he felt the pressure was too much, he just played the ball long.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it, and I was a big proponent to get Johansson in for Saunders, and I think both Johansson and Johnson are improvements over Saunders. I mean, we've seen it. Saunders is number 2 or number 3 on the depth chart in Orlando right now. So I like Johansson for his ability to play the ball out of the back with his feet. I like Johnson for his ability to make saves, but I think his ability to play the ball with his feet, despite not being as great as Johansson, that shot-stopping ability gives him the edge. And I think that's what Vieira saw. That's why Saunders was in there, because he could stop all those shots. That's why Johansson gave up a total of 7 goals against Toronto, because he wasn't able to stop all those 7 shots. So I think Vieira learned his lesson, says, I like playing the ball out of the back, but I also like not conceding goals a whole heck of a lot more. So that's why they went out. They spent a lot of money to bring in Sean Johnson, and that's why he's going to be our number 1 starting against Orlando.
So Carlos said he looked a little uncomfortable with his feet. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And Taylor made a good point. It's something I want to bring up. When you're a keeper that's not used to playing with your feet, one of the challenges that you face is that your decision making is to stay settled in and not be willing to come out of your box. And we saw Johnson a couple of times have to make these decisions where he had to come out of his box under pressure. I think one time he headed it away and the other time he just kicked it out of bounds. But in neither case, it looked like he was not anticipating that play, and it was more reactionary. And that's a little bit tough, because how many times did you see Josh Saunders take touches outside of the box last year? I think in total of the entire season, I think he had maybe 10 touches outside of the box.
Yeah, and each one of those, I felt my blood pressure rising. And I felt a little bit like that today with Johnson. When he came out of the box, especially for that headed ball that he headed out to the fence, that got me a little bit nervous. I was like, what are you doing, Johnson? You're not Manuel Neuer. Just stay back, make the saves. But I guess that's what Vieira wants from his keepers. He wants them to be able to kind of play that sweeper role to back up his defense. I don't know if Johnson's great at it. I don't think he is. But hopefully with time, he can work into it. He's still young. He's not even 27 years. He's 27 years old. So he's definitely young for a keeper. He can still build on his game. And I think if he continues to do that well, we'll see some great success with that.
So we got just about 20 minutes left in the show. I think we scared people away from trying to connect and give us a phone call. But if you guys give us a phone call, trust me, we'll get you involved. If we'll do our best to make sure that the people out there on Facebook Live can hear what your questions are. We'd love to have the interaction. But the next question of a player that this is the second time we saw him, Alex Cayens. Right. Here's the one thing. Yeah, he made some mistakes. He had that ball go off him that led to that first chance in the first half. Mm-hmm. But he had recovery speed that
so fast.
He's a great replacement for Chanot. I know Chanot played on the other side, but at least on that side, there's so much speed on that left side with the connection between Matarrita and Cayens. And as we think back, we do also have to talk a little bit about the left back depth position. I mean, I guess Rodney Wallace would be one of those guys.
Right. And Allen's played left back in the past, so I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, Cayens impressed me. He got caught out a few times, which was a little bit disconcerting.
Yeah, I know you were mentioning that a couple of times during the game. You didn't like his getting sucked in by the defense or by the attack.
I was like, oh my God, it's Jefferson Mena all over again. Just stay in your position, stick to your man, and make sure no one gets behind you. But just like Mena, he's got that tremendous speed that is able to catch up to players. Now, the question is he going to be able to use his tools intelligently enough to not be Jefferson Mena, where you do great, you look great in one-on-one situations, and then you get caught out and blown away by someone who just lobs the ball over your head? Or is he going to be an issue where he doesn't know what he's doing at the end of the day? And hopefully, he's going for a color scheme switch. Hopefully Cayens does well. He's improved me so far. I'm surprised he's beat out Brillant so quickly. Brillant's been fantastic in the air for us. I don't know how well Cayens is in the air, but we'll see what happens. I'm comfortable with backline of Cayens and Chanot.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the question. As we talk about depth, as we talk about who's going to be in the starting 11, because that's what Javier wants us to talk about.
Okay.
Who do you give Chanot and Cayens to start as that center back pairing? What happens to Brillant? I know a lot of people will be happy that Brillant's not going to be there to put in the own goals, but beyond that, is that enough of a change?
Well, yeah, I want to shout out Mike for actually listening to the comments and switching out the blue mic for you, Oscar. Yeah, Briand is allegedly, I guess he's going to be relegated to the bench. And is that wise for a guy who's making a big chunk of change? I know people don't want to talk about him for whatever reason, but there's another guy making a lot of money who's not playing, and we haven't heard about him at all. The team doesn't seem to talk about him. There is a deadline coming up for MLS teams to get their rosters into compliance, and we were talking about this earlier. Is Mix Diskerud going to end up being cut from this team?
I mean, you asked me today. I have to say yes. That there's no way that NYCFC wants to carry that cap hit for 2017. There's just if you. I mean, we have to do the math because I don't know. I forget what it is with the TAM. How much that buys down his contract and how much he actually costs us. Yeah, I know, Carlos. We try to avoid the subject as much as we can, but until NYCFC gets this out of the way, he is the elephant in the room.
Yeah, I know, guys. People don't want to talk about him that much, but when you have your fourth highest paid player not even making the 18s, not even making highlight videos of practice, something's up. And Mix came in before that targeted allocation money came in. So we don't really know how his contract works, who's paying it, if MLS is paying it for whatever reason because Don Garber wanted him in the league. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered that people either haven't asked or haven't had answered. So it's my personal crusade is to find out what's happening with him. But we'll go back. I digress. We'll go to Briand. I'm not too worried about him eating a chunk of change. If I remember correctly, Jason Hernandez was taking up a big amount of money. So was Jefferson Mena. And now with both of them gone, having one guy who's a little bit better than both of them, in my opinion, as a good backup center back, someone that you can rotate in and out, is not a bad thing. I'd rather have three very capable center backs as opposed to two center backs and then like two other guys who are just okay.
But if Sands doesn't get signed, because I don't think he will, and if one of your center backs gets hurt, then you're dealing with Briant in your starting 11,
right?
And you're dealing with Ethan White as your backup center back,
right?
That's not a position anyone wants to be in.
That's assuming that you don't switch to three at the back at some point.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but it's definitely a challenge. You know, let's talk about another key play for this game because we were talking about the left back depth chart. You know, Rodney Wallace and Ronald Matarrita did a great job overlapping, and I even said it when we were watching this game. You don't lose anything when they overlap because Wallace is just as good at left back as Matarrita is, and Matarrita actually did cause that penalty. Now he wasn't the only one at fault, and it's a great point, but it's definitely a situation where he going to be prone to making those mistakes? Because my criticism of Matarrita has always been too often he's out of position, and he makes up for it by being fast and getting recovering.
Well, what I would love to know, and this is something I guess we have to ask Patrick the next time we get a chance to, is Matarrita getting out of position, or is that something that Patrick Vieira wants him to do? If he wants him to go up the wing, we can't really fault him for it because that's what he's telling him. But yes, he has the ability. He does mess up. He gave up the penalty today. Whether or not Benny dove is irrelevant. Matarrita made a terrible challenge coming in from behind on a guy that's in the box that had already gotten past him. So I'm not too worried about him making defensive lapses if that's what Vieira wants, because at the end of the day, we're going to score more than we concede, Mike. So if Matarrita can give some assist here and there and a goal gets let up over the course of the season, I'm not too worried about it. And like you said, Rodney Wallace has played left back before with Costa Rica, with Portland. So it's not that big of a deal. Rodney Wallace can go back and defend for him. He can even step up for him if Matarrita's out or gone for whatever reason.
Yeah, Javier, I agree with you. We need to find another center back. The problem is we don't have a lot of cap room to do it, I don't think. I mean, and you have Ethan White as your depth center back. That's the signing that still confounds me, and I know I'm not the only one. It's just interesting to see, why he wasn't a player that they tried to move, or if they didn't try to move, probably the other guy we didn't see today that we've seen a lot that has left back ability is Awuwa.
Well, don't forget about Ben Sweat, who we just signed.
Yeah. So
there's your center back, Def.
That's right. So Ben Sweat could definitely bump Ethan White down on the depth chart for a backup center back, because he did very well in that last game.
Yeah.
So we got about another 15 minutes left. Again, we love the interaction. Thanks so much. Let's take a minute. Let's let people know. So obviously we're recording this show in a house. There was not a lot of activity going on for people going out, and we got a phone call.
Let's see. No one wants to watch a preseason game on a Saturday night? I'm shocked.
Hey, welcome to the show. 315. Where are you from?
It's Rob from Long Island.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm wonderful. I have a quick 2 questions for you guys.
Go for it.
In this upcoming season, who takes more corners, Pirlo or Maxi?
Well, that's a good question, and that's something we were talking about earlier. I hate short corners, and that's something that the team seems to like doing a lot. So if we keep doing those short corners, it'll be Pirlo to Maxi. But I think Pirlo will end up taking more corners throughout the season.
I tend to agree, just because I don't think. Well, you know what? I guess he makes a good point, because let's say Pirlo takes the corner. Rob, the question you have to ask is, regardless of who's taking the corner, and assuming they're both on the field, where is the other player? Because neither one of them is really going to be a threat in the box. They're not going to be the type of player who fights for the ball in the box. So they're going to have to be maybe a short outlet or or someone who's on the far end looking to catch the ball, off of a flick header. But neither one of them is going to be the guy who's going to fight. They're not Dax McCarty. What's your second question?
The second question was, which non-forward do you think scores the most fantasy points this year?
This is a Mike Denton question.
Does Maxi Morales count as a forward?
No, I don't think so.
If Maxi Morales doesn't count as a forward, I'm going to go with Maxi Morales.
Yeah, I got to agree. I think Maxi, look, he is a DP. He's gotten that contract for a reason. I know he's not the big name jersey seller that NYCFC fans might have wanted, but I think Morales is going to give us the results. He's going to deliver. He already got the assist. I mean, how many points do you get for an assist?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good. I would definitely take him on my fantasy team as a center mid.
Anything else?
No? Any other questions?
That's it. That's it. Thanks, guys. You guys are awesome.
Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. And we got it to work. Look at that. I mean, it wasn't perfect. I don't know how that's going to happen. But so we were going through, we were talking about something as we got the call from Rob. Next Sunday is the first game of the season. So we will be at St. Pat's Bar and Grill. We'll be there with the third rail. It is not just a third rail event, so please don't think that we're kind of keeping a certain group out. No, this is a bar. It's a watch party. It's open to everybody. But we will be broadcasting live from that bar, so you can come see us. I don't think you're going to be there.
I will not be there. I will actually be out of the country.
But I think I'll be there. We're going to try to get Sam Dunn back. I think Jake Beck from Blue Balls is going to be there.
Yep.
So please come down. Support the show. We'll have a microphone there, so you guys can give us your thoughts. We'll have a great conversation about the game. And if you're at a watch party in a different place, or if you couldn't get out and you just wanted to watch the game at home, by all means, tune into this show, because every away game this season, we're going to try to do this show where we go on Facebook Live and give you guys a chance to interact.
And if you can't make it out for whatever reason to Manhattan, say you live out in Connecticut, live out far on Long Island, we are going to move around to different bars throughout the season, throughout the city. So just if that one's too far for you, we'll be moving around to different bars. So we'll make it available to everyone as best as we can.
And if you have a place that you would recommend, I know NYC 12 kind of sent the message out a little bit too late for us to respond that they were in Banter. So definitely would like to talk to those guys and see if we can't set up a show there. But Connecticut is also an alternative. That was something that Martin Beal said that he would definitely like to set us up for. So looking forward to that. Last 10 minutes of the show. let's wrap it up. We didn't talk about the starting 11 that we expect to see for.
Let's go through it right now. Who do you expect to see in Orlando?
I expect to see the back four, the back five. Let's include Johnson.
So that's Matarrita, Cayenne, Chanot, Allen, and Johnson.
Correct. The midfield is going to be tough because I haven't seen Orlando's new field, but I'm assuming it's got to be a pretty spacious field. I mean,
yes,
it's a soccer specific. So is that space going to be too large for Pirlo to cover? We don't know what the forecast is going to be, but it's you figure in Sunday a March Sunday 5:00 start in Orlando probably could have some humidity to deal with. So is that something where you'd maybe go with a younger, fitter lineup?
I don't think so, because that's something else that came up earlier in the week that Vieira was saying he's not worried about Villa or Pirlo's age. He's saying he knows these players, they've played at a high level, and they trust their bodies, and he trusts them. If something's wrong with them, they're gonna tell Vieira. At least that's what he told us. That if something is an issue, if they're not feeling up to it, if they're tired, if the humidity's bothering them, that'll be something that's mentioned to him. So I think we're going to see Pirlo unless something drastic happens.
Yeah, so Tony kind of summed it up very well. Tony, I agree with you. You're going to see the same midfield that you saw today. You're going to see Herrera, Ring, but Pirlo is going to come in. I'm sorry. You're going to see Morales and Ring, and Pirlo is going to take Herrera's position.
So instead of a true 6, you'll have Pirlo in that central mid role.
Instead of a true 6.
Well, you don't think Ring...
I think here's what we'll see Pirlo start in that 6 position, in that holding position. But if the pressure gets too much, then Ring and Pirlo will switch, and Ring will play the 6, and Pirlo will I actually think Pirlo will shift over to the left, and Maxi will go move a little bit closer to the forwards. But then I think you actually see the same starting 3 that you saw today. You see Wallace, Villa, and Harrison.
Yeah, I think the lineup's going to be exactly the same with Pirlo in for Herrera, like you said. But if it becomes an issue, you can move, as D-Roy mentioned earlier, to a double pivot. You can have Ring and Pirlo in the middle, and you can have Morales just sitting behind the back 3 and in front of them, moving into wherever there's space.
And that actually suits Morales' style very well.
Yeah.
You saw it when he actually got the assist. He likes to roam. So if you pull Ring back and you leave Ring next to Pirlo, that leaves all that space open. Those front 4 can be very fluid, and it can work really well. And Morales has the ability to get open.
Yeah, I love it. If Morales can get that space with Pirlo dropping magic passes in over the top to the winger or to Morales, it's going to be some very beautiful, beautiful game to watch in Orlando.
So, guys, we really appreciate all the support. It's been fun talking to you guys. Any comments or recommendations you have for the show, please, by all means, I am on Twitter at Blue City Radio.
You can find me at NYCFC fan or at NYCFC Nation.
And I appreciate it. We got a lot of new listeners because we tweeted out the link. That's one of the things that we've struggled with. It's kind of tough to manage this from paying attention to the feeds, to the tweets, to the calls,
and the game,
and still getting that link out. But that if you follow us on Facebook Live, you follow Blue York 1 on Facebook Live. Every time we go live, you'll get the update on your message. So we really appreciate it, Dan. It's been great having your comments and your opinions all the time. So we really appreciate it.
Before we go, what's your prediction for Orlando?
I think we get the result. I definitely think that. I don't think Orlando has done enough to shore up their defense. That was their issue. As soon as Christ took over, they just didn't have enough, and I don't think haven't seen enough of their signings be signings that have made me say, hey, this is a much improved team, which is the exact opposite of when I look at NYCFC's lineup. This is a much more explosive lineup. I mean, Kyrie Shelton hasn't even been a factor of conversation today, and he was a guy that we. That we relied on as a super sub and someone that people thought was going to be a big piece of this team. Not to say that he can't, but and this is probably a great comment relative to the Mikey Lopez, because this is what I think, and I've discussed with some other guys. If you see guys like Mikey Lopez, if you see guys like Kyrie Shelton, I think it's because they've elevated their game and improved so much that they deserve to be on the field. which is only a good thing. Same could be said about a guy like Tommy McNamara.
Yeah.
So I think that's a positive. Yeah, Carlos, you know what? I think that's not a bad guess. You know, we're seeing the predictions come in, you know, but I think 2-1 is very fair. I think this is a team that is not shored up defensively. So you know that Orlando with Kaká and Kyle Larin are going to have opportunities. I think Sean Johnson's going to do enough to keep us in the game, and I think NYCFC is going to get a 2-1 victory.
I'm not that high on it. We have 2 stadium opening games in Ecuador and in one in Orlando previously, and they're both ended in draws. I think we're going to be 3 for 3, and it's going to be a 2-2 draw.
Okay, could be, and it's funny you make that comparison because the comments coming out of Orlando are that stadium, as much as they've cut the ribbon on it, might still have a couple of areas
Still a work in
that
progress.
they need the paint to dry on. But it should be interesting. And guys who are going down to that game, travel safe, have a lot of fun. It's going to be wild. It's not going to be the crowd. That's probably the one benefit that NYCFC has going to this game versus the Citrus Bowl game. Not as large of a crowd.
25,000 as opposed to the 40 or 50.
You're still going to have that wall, which is going to be impressive to see in person. But that standing wall is going to be great. But I think it's going to be Orlando trying to figure out how to use the stadium to their benefits. You know, I'm surprised they didn't, choose a friendly to inaugurate this stadium so they could get some of the butterflies out of their stomach from walking on the pitch that first time.
They probably just didn't have enough time. Like you said, they're still waiting on the paint to dry, still putting the doors on the bathroom stall. So hopefully it's ready by the time we kick off.
So as we wrap up, thanks to all the guys that are taking part in this show. We have the guys from Dudes in Blue, Blue Balls, Hudson River Blue. Martin Beal writes for Last Word on Sports. You guys from NYCFC Nation podcast. That's Chris and Andres who were on the last show with me, and then yourself. And thanks to Avid and Leo who are working on the Blue York One side of this. But it's been great. Final thoughts.
Well, we're going through our preseason as well, just like this team. So hopefully both us and the team get better as the season progresses. No more mental mistakes, no more technical mistakes on both parts. I want the team to gel. Hopefully they'll have enough time to do it early on, because the last thing I want is another repeat of the last 2 seasons where we struggle early on and we just take L's for the first 2 months. That's just no more.
Okay, so Dave gave us a piece of information. That's great. It's one of the reasons why we do the show, and we love the feedback. Apparently, St. Louis FC came to the new Orlando Stadium. So okay, so that was that game today, Dave? I don't know. I think they were playing earlier today.
Maybe.
So that's okay. So they are going to have a little bit more comfort.
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
Final thoughts.
Well, I guess I'm trying to think about what is going to be different about Vieira and his approach to MLS and NYCFC this year. And I'd like to think that we saw a glimmer of it today with playing out the back. Last year with Jefferson Mena, with Chanot, with Briant, we saw this team. Yeah, okay, so that was, closed-door scrimmage today. Okay, so that makes sense why, we didn't know about it, or it wasn't promoted as much, because I'm sure people would have liked to have seen that game maybe live. But I think what we saw was Patrick Vieira pounding the pavement, saying, "No, you guys have to do it my way. You have to play my style. We have to learn how to do this." And I think you're going to see NYCFC be a little more pragmatic. I think you're going to see Vieira, loosen up the reins a little on his players. We saw a lot of balls out of the back that I don't think we would have seen last year. RJ, playing some balls out the back. I think Herrera took one that was a long ball out the back. Yeah. Cayenne's, and we already mentioned a couple from Johnson. So I think that's what I'm really hoping to see, because I think that'll be the difference. That'll be the difference of us beating the press that the Red Bulls bring against us, that Toronto brings against us. Vieira said, no, we're going to still play our own way, and we paid the price.
We're going to adjust it this season.
We're going to adjust this season.
All right, let's hope that happens.
So, guys, thanks. That does it for me.
Thank you for having me on, Mike, as always. I know it's weird because it's not a podcast, but thank you to everyone out there who was watching, listening, sending in comments, called in. Love it. Keep it going, especially for the season. We're going to be here the entire way, hopefully.
Take care. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.